They noticed him the moment he walked in, not because they knew him, but because he didn't fit. Everyone else was dressed for it. Clean boots, pressed shirts, looking like they belonged there. He didn't. Muddy boots, dust still on his clothes, like he had come straight from the field without stopping. A few people glanced, then smiled, then laughed. Because auctions like this weren't for people like him. Not usually. He didn't react, didn't try to explain it. He just took a seat and waited. Because he hadn't come to be seen. He had come for something specific, something everyone else in that room had already overlooked. And when the bidding started, that's when everything changed. The auction wasn't small. This wasn't equipment or leftovers. It was land. Several parcels being sold off piece by piece. Some of it already had attention. Clean fields, easy access. The kind of land buyers could work immediately. That's where most of the interest was. That's where the conversations were happening, numbers being discussed, plans already forming, because those were the safe bets. The predictable ones, the ones that made sense. But not all the parcels looked like that. One of them sat off to the side. Less interest, less attention. Rough ground, uneven, parts of it overgrown. No clear advantage at first glance. The kind of land people walk past because it doesn't show anything right away. That's the one he was watching, not casually, not out of curiosity, carefully. Because while everyone else was looking at what was easy to see, he was looking at what wasn't. The way the land dipped, how the tree lines broke, where water might move, even if it wasn't obvious. Small things, details most people wouldn't notice, unless they had spent enough time working land like it. To everyone else, it looked like a risk, something that would take more work than it was worth. Something uncertain. But to him, it didn't look empty. It looked unfinished. And that's a very different thing. The bidding started fast. The first few parcels went exactly the way everyone expected. Strong interest, quick raises, numbers climbing without hesitation, voices confident, decisions easy, because those were the safe ones. The land that made sense at a glance. He didn't move, didn't raise his hand, didn't try to compete. He just watched. Let the others take what they came for, one by one. The good parcels were gone, sold to the highest bidder. Nods, handshakes, satisfied looks across the room. Then the pace changed. The next parcel came up, the one most people hadn't paid attention to. The room got quieter, not silent, but slower, less certain. A few small bids, then hesitation, because this one wasn't clear. It didn't offer anything obvious. No immediate return, no easy plan, just work, risk, and time. The kind of things most people avoid, especially when money's involved. A couple of bidders tried, tested the price, then stopped. You could feel it in the room. That quiet agreement, that this one wasn't worth pushing for, that it would go low or not go at all. That's when he moved. For the first time, he raised his hand. A few heads turned. Some recognized him now, the one in muddy boots. And the look on their faces said the same thing as before. He didn't belong in this part of the bidding, but he didn't hesitate, didn't overthink it. Because he wasn't guessing. He already knew what he was looking at. And for the first time that day, he wasn't watching anymore. He was in it. At first, it didn't make sense to anyone else. Why he would even bid on it. Why he would risk money on something everyone had already passed on. The ground looked rough, uneven, parts of it overgrown. Nothing about it suggested an easy return. But he wasn't looking at the surface. He was looking past it, at the way the land sloped, just enough to carry water, at the tree line, broken in a way that hinted at something below, at the soil, where it changed color, in places most people wouldn't notice. He had seen land like this before, not once, not by accident, but enough times to recognize a pattern, because sometimes what looks neglected on top is holding something valuable underneath. He knew what others didn't. That the rough sections weren't a problem. They were a sign of water movement, of richer soil below the surface, of land that hadn't been pushed to produce yet, untouched potential. That's what he was bidding on. Not what it was, but what it could become. Another bidder tried, raised the price slightly, testing him, waiting to see if he would back off. He didn't. Raised it again. Calm. Without hesitation. Because to him, this wasn't a gamble. It was a decision already made. And slowly, the room started to shift. Not because they understood it yet, but because they could see something they hadn't before. Confidence. The kind you don't fake. The kind that makes people question their own judgment. And for the first time, the laughter stopped. The bids didn't stop right away. A couple of them pushed back, not because they suddenly saw the value, but because they didn't want to lose to him. The price climbed. Slower than before, but steady. Each number echoing a little louder in the room. Because now, people were paying attention. The man they had laughed at was still in it, still raising, still calm. One bidder hesitated, looked down at his notes, then back at the land listing, trying to find something, anything, that justified going higher. But it wasn't there. Not in the numbers, not in the surface details. And that hesitation was all it took. The next bid came from him, clear, confident, no pause. The room went quiet, not completely, but enough. Enough that you could feel it. That shift from dismissal to doubt. The auctioneer looked around, waiting. One more bid. Anyone willing to challenge it, but no one moved. No one raised their hand. Because at that point it wasn't about the land anymore. It was about whether they believed him, and they didn't. Not enough to risk it. Going once. The words hung in the air. Going twice. Still nothing. Sold. Just like that. It was his. And for a moment, no one said anything. They just looked. At him. At the paper. At each other. Trying to understand what had just happened. Because the man they had laughed at had just walked away with the one thing they had all ignored. And standing there, holding something everyone else had passed on, there was only one thing left to realize. He hadn't outbid them. He had seen something they didn't. After that, no one laughed. Not when he walked out. Not when the papers were signed. And not when they saw exactly what he had bought. Because from the outside, it still looked the same. Rough ground. Uneven. Nothing about it suddenly made sense. But that wasn't the point. He hadn't bought it for what it looked like. He bought it for what it could become. And that's something most people never stop to consider. Because it's easier to judge what you can see. Easier to trust what looks finished. Clean. Ready. Certain. But the things that matter most usually don't look like that at first. They look incomplete, unclear, not worth the effort, and that's exactly why they get overlooked. He didn't try to explain it after that, didn't go back to prove anyone wrong, didn't need to, because the decision had already been made before anyone else understood it. Standing there, with something everyone else had passed on, he understood something most people only realize too late. That the difference between being right and being early often looks exactly the same. And sometimes that's all it takes.